The day I told my boss I was pregnant, he didn't smile. He didn't say congratulations. He just stared at me like I'd dropped a bomb on his calendar. 2 days later, I was locked out of my email and hit with a cold, silent termination. No explanation, no severance, nothing. I was devastated, jobless, and carrying a child. But instead of breaking down, I went public with proof. Want to know how I made him regret every second of it? His name was Craig. On paper, he looked like every HR-approved definition of a decent manager. Married, 2 kids, coached his son's soccer team, always wore those stiff button-ups and had framed pictures of his beautiful family all over his office. He'd even talk about how lucky he was to have such a supportive wife and how being a dad changed his life. You know, the whole family man act. And for a while, I actually believed it. I thought, okay, he might be a little awkward, maybe a little old school, but he means well. But that's the thing. People like Craig are really good at pretending. What I saw over time and what I ignored because I didn't want to stir the pot was that Craig didn't actually respect women. He tolerated us. He liked having women around the office because it made the place look diverse, friendly, and modern. But when it came down to how he spoke to us, how he treated us, it was clear. We were just decoration. He'd make comments that seemed harmless at first, but the more you listened, the more disgusting they were. Like once, when a new girl joined our department, he said, "Finally, someone good-looking around here," and then laughed like it was some charming compliment. Another time, when one of our team members, who was 7 months pregnant, had to leave a meeting early because she felt lightheaded, Craig leaned over to one of the guys and whispered, "Glad that's not contagious." Then he looked straight at me and smiled, like it was funny, like pregnancy was some kind of workplace disease. And you know what's messed up? I laughed it off. I faked a smile. I told myself, he's just trying to be funny. He doesn't mean it like that. Because when you're a woman in a male-dominated office, especially one where your boss has that fake nice vibe, you learn to pick your battles. You learn to keep your head down, work twice as hard, and ignore the gut feelings telling you something's off. Looking back now, I see the red flags everywhere. The way he always asked the younger women to take notes in meetings. How he'd call women girls, no matter their age. How he once told a colleague not to hire a female applicant because she'll probably end up getting pregnant anyway. And yet, I still gave him the benefit of the doubt. I thought he was just a little tone deaf, maybe old-fashioned, harmless. But when I told him I was pregnant, when I gave him news that should have been met with at least basic human decency, all the masks fell off. The fake smiles, the dad jokes, the family man talk, gone. Just a cold expression and a mumbled, "All right, thanks for letting me know." 2 days later, I got an email saying I was fired. That's when it hit me. Craig was never awkward. He was calculated. He knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't want a pregnant woman on his team because to him, that meant inconvenience. It meant doctor's appointments, maternity leave, maybe even a woman speaking up for her rights. And people like Craig don't like women who speak up. They like women who stay quiet, who smile through discomfort, who thank them for being understanding, even when they're not. When I found out I was pregnant, I felt this mix of joy, fear, and disbelief. You know how it is. You want to be excited, but you also don't want to get ahead of yourself. So I kept it quiet for the first 8 weeks. I didn't even tell my closest friends at work. I just wanted to wait until I felt a little more secure, a little more sure everything was okay. Once I hit that mark, I decided it was time to tell my boss, Craig. I figured the sooner he knew, the more time we'd have to plan everything properly. I genuinely wanted to be respectful and responsible about it. So I scheduled a private meeting with him. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet chat in his office. I was nervous, but I approached it with care. I told him softly, "I just wanted to let you know I'm pregnant. It's still early, but I want to be upfront so we can figure out a plan together." I even went out of my way to reassure him. I said I'd make sure my projects were all covered, that I'd help on board whoever would fill in for me, and that I wasn't going to leave anyone hanging. And you know what he said? Nothing. Not even a fake congratulations. Not a smile, not even a nod. Just this cold, blank stare. Then he said, in the most robotic, passive-aggressive voice ever, "Okay, thanks for letting me know." That was it. I walked out of that office with a pit in my stomach. But I still tried to convince myself that maybe he just needed time to process. Maybe he was just surprised or caught off guard. 2 days later, I came into work, sat down at my desk, and tried to log into my email. And I was locked out, completely. Like I'd never worked there. My ID badge didn't work either. At first I thought it was a glitch, some IT mistake. But then I realized what was happening. I texted my supervisor. No response. I called HR, straight to voicemail. I sent emails from my personal account. Nothing. It was like I had been erased from the company overnight. Later that same day, I got an email from some generic HR address I'd never seen before. It was a termination letter. No explanation. No phone call, no meeting. Just a cold, lifeless paragraph saying my contract had been terminated, effective immediately. No severance, no benefits, no mention of my pregnancy, no reason, period. I sat there staring at that email for what felt like forever. I remember rereading it, thinking maybe I missed something, maybe there was a second page or a follow-up. But there wasn't. That was it. I was done. Just like that. It felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Not just because I lost my job, but because I knew deep down why it happened. I told the truth, I trusted the process, and I got punished for it. Craig didn't want a pregnant woman on his team. He didn't want to deal with maternity leave or accommodations or any of it. So instead of doing the legal human thing, he took the easy, cruel way out. I broke down. Completely. There's no other way to put it. The moment that termination email hit my inbox, I felt like my entire world fell apart. I just sat there, staring at the screen, reading the words over and over like maybe if I blinked enough times, they'd change. But they didn't. I had just been fired. No warning, no explanation. And I was 2 months pregnant. I cried for 3 days straight. I'm not talking about soft, quiet crying. I mean ugly, gut-wrenching sobs that leave your eyes puffy and your chest hurting. I couldn't eat, could barely sleep. I'd lie awake at night, my mind racing with fear and anxiety. I was pregnant, jobless, and completely blindsided. Everything I thought I had control over just disappeared in a single email. I kept thinking, what did I do wrong? I've worked so hard. I always went the extra mile. I never slacked, never caused trouble. I thought I was part of a team, part of something that mattered. But the moment I said I was pregnant, it was like I stopped being useful to them. Like I became a burden instead of an asset. And that kind of pain? It's hard to explain unless you've been there. My husband saw me unravel. He tried everything to calm me down, making tea, holding me while I cried, telling me we'd figure it out. But when I told him exactly what happened, that I shared my pregnancy news and got fired 2 days later, he was livid. I'd never seen him that angry. He wanted to drive straight to the office and confront Craig face to face. I could see it in his eyes. He was ready for a full-blown war. But I stopped him. Through tears, I looked him in the eye and said, "No, we're not fighting. We're exposing." I didn't want to scream at anyone. I didn't want to throw fists or send angry emails. I wanted the truth out there. I wanted people to know exactly what kind of man Craig was and what kind of company would treat a pregnant employee like trash the moment she became inconvenient. I knew if we reacted with rage, they'd twist the story. They'd say I was emotional, dramatic, unstable, anything to protect themselves. So I chose a different path, a smarter one. I was still scared, still broken, but something inside me had shifted. I went from crying to calculating, from afraid to furious. And once that decision was made, to tell the world what happened instead of begging for justice behind closed doors, I started to feel a little more like myself again. Like maybe, just maybe, I could turn this heartbreak into something bigger, something louder, something that couldn't be ignored. Here's where I turned the tables. After spending days feeling broken, something inside me shifted. I stopped crying and started thinking. I knew what happened to me wasn't just unfair, it was wrong. And if Craig thought he could get away with it quietly, he had no idea who he was messing with. I decided if they were going to treat me like I was disposable, I was going to make sure the whole world saw how they treated people. I wasn't going to fight this in silence. I was going to expose it loudly. So I started documenting everything. Every email I had ever exchanged with Craig or HR, every Slack message, every calendar invite showing how I tried to communicate, how I was included in meetings before the pregnancy and suddenly dropped from everything after. I pulled screenshots where I had asked for clarity or support and was flat out ignored. And then I found the gold. Messages where Craig had made snide remarks about pregnant women, acting like they were some sort of inconvenience. One of them literally said, "Pregnancy is a personal choice, not a company problem." That one hit hard. But it was exactly the kind of proof I needed. I didn't just want justice for myself. I wanted other women to know they weren't alone. So I wrote my story. Not just a short post, a full expose. I sat down and typed through tears and anger, laying everything out, beginning to end. The shock, the silence, the firing, the emotional toll it took. I titled it, "I Got Fired for Being Pregnant. Here's My Story." And then I hit publish. On LinkedIn, on social media. I didn't care if it made people uncomfortable. It was the truth. What happened next was something I never expected. Within 24 hours, the post blew up. Over 40,000 shares, hundreds of comments. My inbox was full of messages, mostly from women, sharing their own stories. Some said the exact same thing happened to them. Others thanked me for speaking up because they never had the courage. The support was overwhelming, and honestly, it helped me start to breathe again. Then came the messages from former employees of the company, people I'd never even met, some from years ago. They all said the same thing. "I'm not surprised at all. Craig's always been like that." One woman told me she left because he made her life hell during her maternity leave. Another said she'd reported him for inappropriate behavior, and nothing ever happened. It wasn't just me. This was a pattern. And now, the whole world knows. Craig's carefully polished image as the family man was falling apart. My story was trending, and people were tagging the company, demanding answers. They couldn't ignore it anymore. I went from being shut out to being heard, and that felt powerful in a way I never expected. Then came the media. After my post exploded online, I started getting messages not just from strangers and supporters, but also from journalists. The first was a writer from a women's rights magazine. She said my story hit her hard and she wanted to feature it. She wasn't just interested in the drama, she cared about the issue. She told me this kind of thing happens more than people realize, and stories like mine help bring it out of the shadows. I agreed to talk to her. I figured if sharing my truth could make even one other woman feel less alone or more empowered, it was worth it. That article gained traction almost immediately. A few days later, I got an email from someone at BuzzFeed, then another message from a local news station. Before I knew it, I was scheduling interviews, answering calls, and telling my story on camera. At first, it was terrifying. Me, a regular person, speaking out publicly about something so personal. But the more I told it, the stronger I felt. I realized I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was standing up for every woman who had ever been pushed aside for choosing motherhood. And this time, I didn't hold back. I said Craig's name. I named the company. I showed the receipts, Emails, screenshots, messages, everything I had. There was no tiptoeing around it. I told the truth, and I told it loud. People listened. The reaction was wild. The company's Glassdoor rating started tanking. Sponsors and partners started pulling out quietly, wanting no association with that kind of scandal. Former employees started sharing their own horror stories, and the whole place looked like it was falling apart from the inside. 3 weeks later, Craig resigned. No long explanation, no grand statement, just a quiet post saying he was stepping down to focus on personal matters. Yeah, right. Everyone knew exactly why. He didn't step down. He got pushed out, and the internet shoved him. Then something funny happened. HR reached out. After ghosting me completely when I needed them the most, they suddenly wanted to talk things through and see if we could resolve this constructively. I didn't respond. I didn't owe them closure. They had their chance to treat me with respect, and they threw it away. After everything that happened, getting fired without warning, being ignored by HR, and watching them pretend everything was fine while I was left in the dark, I knew I couldn't just walk away. Going public and exposing them was one thing, but that wasn't going to be enough for me. I wanted real consequences. Public shaming was satisfying, sure, but I needed them to feel the impact in a much bigger way. I wanted them to pay, both literally and figuratively. So, I started looking for a lawyer. I wasn't just looking for someone who'd take my case. I needed someone who actually believed in it. I wanted someone who would fight as hard as I was willing to fight. After a bit of searching, I found this incredible employment lawyer, a true powerhouse. She wasn't here for any sugarcoating or playing nice. She got straight to the point and told me exactly what I was up against. What Craig and the company had done was wrong, but it was also illegal. Firing me just because I was pregnant? That was clear-cut pregnancy discrimination. And guess what? She'd seen it before, way too many times. But the big difference now was that I had everything I needed: proof, documentation, and a story that had already gained so much attention. That made my case even stronger. I wasn't just some woman out there with a claim. I was a woman with a paper trail, a public expose, and a whole army of support behind me. So we filed the lawsuit. It wasn't easy. The process was long, and the paperwork was overwhelming. It felt like I was signing my life away, one document at a time. But honestly, every step, no matter how exhausting, felt like I was slowly taking my power back. With every form I signed, every response I gave, I knew I was doing this for the right reasons. This wasn't just about money or revenge. It was about making sure they couldn't just sweep me under the rug and forget about it. It was about showing them that there were real consequences for treating women like this. And then, months later, we settled. 6 figures. 6. I still can't fully wrap my head around it. When my lawyer told me the final number over the phone, I was speechless. I sat there in disbelief for a second, just letting it sink in. After everything they put me through, they were the ones paying for their mistakes. They didn't want this to go to trial. They didn't want the public spectacle. They knew they were in the wrong and didn't want to face the mess that would come with continuing the fight. They knew they'd lose, so they took the settlement and walked away quietly. But I didn't have to go back to that office again. I didn't have to see Craig or deal with any of the toxic nonsense they had put me through. It was finally over. That settlement wasn't just money. It was a victory. It was proof that I'd stood up for myself, fought back, and came out on top. I never had to go back to a place that treated me like I didn't matter. And that alone was worth more than any check. Now I work from home with my baby in my lap. It's funny how life turns around when you stop letting other people control your story. After everything that happened, with Craig, the company, the lawsuit, the public fallout, I had this moment where I sat back, looked at my life, and thought, I get to decide how this goes now. I wasn't the scared, sobbing mess I had been the day I got fired. I was a mom. I was a survivor. I was finally in charge of my own time, my own work, my own future. And the best part? I didn't need anyone's permission anymore. So I started freelancing. Nothing fancy at first, just taking on small writing gigs here and there, consulting for women led businesses, helping people fix their resumes and deal with tough workplace situations. But word spread and the work kept coming. I didn't even have to push that hard. Women started reaching out after reading my story. Some just wanted to say thank you. Others needed help. They'd ask, "How did you stand up to them?" Or, "Can you help me write something like you wrote?" And I did, because I knew what it felt like to be silenced and alone. And I wasn't about to let someone else go through that without support. Some days, I'm bouncing my baby on my knee while editing a document or talking someone through a tough HR situation. Other days, I'm typing with one hand while holding a bottle in the other. It's messy, chaotic, loud, but it's mine. No one's checking when I clock in. No one's making snide comments about pregnancy not being contagious. No one's locking me out of my email. I wake up, open my laptop, and do what I love, with my baby right there beside me, and honestly, I wouldn't trade that for anything. Meanwhile, Craig, he's unemployed, completely. After resigning in disgrace, it didn't take long for other skeletons to crawl out of his closet. Turns out I wasn't the first woman he disrespected. I just happened to be the first one who didn't back down. Since my story went viral, several other women who worked at that company came forward with their own complaints. Some were from years ago, some were more recent. Either way, HR couldn't ignore it anymore. Not with the spotlight shining so brightly. Now, he's under investigation for multiple violations. There are rumors that he's been blacklisted in the industry. And if I'm being honest, I don't feel sorry for him one bit. It's wild to think that the man who once looked me in the eye and said, "Thanks for letting me know," like I was giving him a death sentence, is now the one whose career is completely ruined. And all I had to do was tell the truth. I didn't scream. I didn't break things. I didn't make threats. I just told my story and backed it up with facts. Karma handled the rest. I think about that a lot, about how close I was to staying quiet, about how easily I could have just accepted it and moved on. But I didn't. I stood up. I shared everything. And in doing that, I not only got justice, I found something better: purpose. Now, every time a woman messages me saying, "I didn't know it was okay to speak up until I read your post," I know I made the right choice. I didn't just expose a bad boss. I helped light a path for others who are walking through the same darkness I once did. And that means more to me than any job title ever could. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.